Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is an ongoing collaboration between Michael K. Vaughan at Stately Vaughan Manor, or is it Vaughan Asylum? And here at Hyde Cottage, where Michael and I talk about the comic books that misshaped our youth. And we have been ranging all over the map. We started out just talking about Marvel's Epic collections. Thick, full-color paperback reprint collections of Marvel's vast back catalog. We started off talking about those, and that's been a lot of fun. We will go back to the Epic collections. Michael has a million of them. In fact, he has such an exorbitantly insane comic book collection. If you don't listen to him talk, and you just look at the camera panning across all of the collected comics that he has, just the graphic novels and hardcover omnibuses. I don't even want to think about how many individual issues he has in long boxes. If you just look at his wall, his collection of collected comics, hardcover and paperback, then you will know that you are looking at the Joker's comic book collection. And you can fill in the maniacal laughter in the background, and you will date yourself according to whose maniacal laughter you fill in. Is it Heath Ledger, or is it, in my case, the great Cesar Romero? I'm leaning more towards, I have occasionally humorously referred to Michael as quite mad. And I base this not only on the fact that he has every single paperback collection and reprint and omnibus that's ever been made, but also that periodically he will hold up an animal on his channel that is obviously a barnyard rooster. And he will say, "Isn't my dog lovely?" This is the sort of thing you get, in Ward 12, when half the people shuffling around in the sunroom think they're Napoleon Bonaparte. But we don't choose our co-hosts. So we started out with the Epic collections, but then we moved on from Marvel to DC Comics, which is more my bailiwick. I love DC Comics with a deep passion. Lots of them I don't, and you can leave it to Michael to find the ones that I don't love. He's doing the picking. Not only because, as I originally thought, he should chart our course because he has all of those things on his shelves, but also now because subsequently I have come to wonder if maybe not picking the subject matter might set him off. And today he chose to finish out the year. He might do comics next Wednesday, but I will not. To finish out the year of our collaboration, he thought it would be a good idea to adapt a tag and an idea and a challenge that is going around parts of BookTube that stems, as do most evil things, from Criminale, the BookTube channel Criminale. Criminale decided to issue a challenge to the rest of the BookTube world to read 100 of the books you already have on your shelves, the ones that you've packed and repacked, boxed and reboxed, that stare at you all day long. Read 100 of those unread books before you buy another single book that's just going to go on the pile and stay unread for years. Perhaps, possibly, at the back of that, there was a germ of a good idea. It seems a little bit Bolshevik to me, but other booktubers have fallen under Criminale's sway. And Michael K. Vaughan is one of those booktubers. He has taken the Criminale Satanic Challenge and is reading 100 books before he buys another one. And one of the ways he thought to do that was to root around to the bottom of his Kindle and find out what things have been on there for a long time. There you go. You've already got the books. You can just read right there. And I love the idea, because I think we all do that. It's the only circumstance in my life where unread books pile up. Otherwise, they don't. The books that are on these shelves are all read. So I went rooting around in my Kindle and not only did that, but made a tag out of it. And a number of people have been doing that, and Michael thought it would be fun to adapt that for our Comic Book Wednesday and root around in the comics he has on his Kindle. And once again, I'm not using a Kindle. He has, in his case, for this video, he had the Amazon Fire, the 10-inch Amazon Fire. I have one of those. Very good device. You pay almost nothing for it, and it's a full-color tablet. And you can triple its value if you get that Amazon 10-inch Fire in the mail and then root the thing. If you strip the Amazon skin off it and make it into just an ordinary working Android tablet, then you have a $400 device that you bought for $100 on Black Friday. I have one of those, and I use it quite a bit. But I have all of my comics on an iPad. Don't know why. I don't know for sure. It's an older iPad, so I'm not 100% sure that the resolution is any better on the iPad than it would be on my Kindle Fire. But I wanted to show you them. I have a rather large library. We'll not be walking through any of these issues, and we won't be lingering long because I have a feeling that quite a few of these things are going to turn up on Comic Book Wednesday. I have large collections of things, like for instance, the 1970s Spider-Man. There is the introduction of the Punisher. Back when he had a receding hairline. A great Gil Kane cover. And I have a long run of those. It's Spider-Man. What do we have here? I don't have the very earliest years of Spider-Man. I'm really not interested. I know this is heresy, but I'm really not interested in Spider-Man until John Romita takes over the art chores. And then I am. So there you have Crisis on Campus. With John Romita Sr. There you go. Just classic stuff like that. I bought all of these issues. This thing, I remember buying this on the newsstand thinking, what a privilege it is to buy a book with such a beautiful cover. That's just fantastically designed cover. Trust John Romita Jr. When he does a cover right. He doesn't always do them right. But when he does a cover right, he does a cover really, really right. Here's a classic issue where the mutant Quicksilver, the Avenger, Quicksilver, Pietro Maximoff, decides on the spur of the moment, as characters often do in this particular run of Spider-Man, that maybe capturing Spider-Man might make him a hero, might burnish his public image. So he just attacks Spider-Man out of the blue. And at one point in the issue, he actually does this move where he is rushing around and around and around Spider-Man in a circle. If you think about it for a minute, running around and around in a circle like that, in a tight circle like that, is not something that you could do, super speed or not. You would rip your legs right out of your hip sockets. But the cover does have the germ of one thing correct, which is two things really. One, Spider-Man is super strong. He can lift 10 tons, but he's not invulnerable. He's not bulletproof. Throw a rock at him, it'll break his skin and he'll bleed like crazy. And Quicksilver not only can move faster than Spider-Man can see, faster than Spider-Man can react to his own spider sense, but also heals commensurately fast. So, this is the only thing that would happen. It wouldn't be Quicksilver doing all sorts of other maneuvers. It would be Quicksilver running up to Spider-Man before Spider-Man even knows he's there, and punching him 100 times in the same inch of his left jaw. Spider-Man or no Spider-Man, spider sense or no spider sense, he's going to drop like a sack of potatoes. But instead, Quicksilver's doing this maneuver, running around and around and around and around him, and Spider-Man decides, well, I'll just stick out my arm. That would rip his arm right off. But instead, it knocks the wind out of Quicksilver. So we have that Spider-Man run, and that's just incredible. It's such a fantastic run. When Spider-Man goes up against Man Mountain Marco, who is he's just a big, hulking mob enforcer. He doesn't have any superpowers, any more technically than the Kingpin does. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a big, hulking leg breaker. And I love how Spider-Man, he gives Spider-Man a little bit of trouble until Spider-Man needs to just ignore him and get around him. See, Man Mountain Marco gives Spider-Man trouble until Spider-Man has something better to do and then just tosses him around. The woman says, you handled that giant like he was a toy. You're as dangerous as they say. And Spider-Man says, aw, I'm just a pussycat when you get to know me. So I have that run, and then that moves on. The John Romita run moves on to the great Ross Andru run. There are some missteps along the way with Gil Kane, but eventually we move on to Ross Andru doing the artwork, and that is incredible as well. Because Ross Andru loves to do these photo backgrounds where you get the character, but he loves to do, like, this is a good example. That is a beautifully drawn building. It's in a Spider-Man It's in a Spider-Man book, but it's beautifully done. Now, Michael K. Vaughan mentioned in his video that one of the problems that tablets have with comic books is the 2-page spread. And he mentions that omnibus volumes also have that problem. You have gutter loss in the middle. But floppy comics don't have that problem. Obviously, you can flatten the thing on the table. And e-comics definitely does. When Spider-Man is facing, for instance, the Grizzly, Ross Andru gives us one part of the page, and then this was a double page where the Grizzly is fighting Spider-Man like that. it's a double page, and it doesn't work quite so well. Now that I've got the Grizzly issue, I'm wondering if there's a great sequence. No, okay. So that is Spider-Man, and I'm sure that we'll be getting to a lot of these. We've done a lot of Spider-Man. Then I have the Avengers, of course. Look at this beautiful Gil Kane cover. Oh my! That is when the Avengers and the Fantastic Four go to the home of the Inhumans for the wedding of Crystal and Quicksilver. Such a great issue, just so fantastic. Let's see here, this issue here where the Black Panther, who's a member in good standing of the Avengers, he's in a lot of these issues, he's hanging out at Avengers Mansion with the Avengers when Claw, the Sonic villain, strikes. And Claw originally shows up at Avengers Mansion in disguise. He's looking to surprise the Avengers. And he shows up as a member of basically the South African government. And he greets all of the Avengers and he shakes their hands. And Black Panther knows that it is a disguise. He knows that it's fake. Because, as he puts it, no white man from that person's country would ever shake hands with a black man. Just a wonderfully adult knowing moment. And my Avengers run moves on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. All the way to the Korvac saga. And then later than that, when these things were... The price just steadily goes up. It's so weird to see, because I remember experiencing that price going up. And the Avengers, of course, like every other book, has doldrums. It has periods that are just terrible. We just don't want to read it at all. And then all of a sudden, a new team will come on board and make it great again. And that happens for a long run on the Avengers here. The Wasp is the leader of the team. Janet Van Dyne is the leader of the team with John Buscema artwork. I believe the last time he drew regularly for the Avengers. And then later on, much later, years and years, decades later, the Black Widow becomes the leader of the team with artwork by Steve Epting. And that run was also great. But we'll be getting to it. So they have Batman Year One. We've already done that. We have Conan the Barbarian with this issue that I walked you through about a stone gargoyle that's actually alive and being held in thrall to the villain's willpower. But this has just issue after issue, and it's so much more convenient than digging out these things from a long box, but also some isolated classics that Michael and I will get to eventually. Like, for instance, For the Man Who Has Everything by Alan Moore, with artwork by Dave Gibbons, though some of you who know your comics might know that the teamwork of Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons gave us The Watchmen. And it was a Superman annual, and the minute people read it, I bought this on the newsstand, and the minute I read it, I said the same thing that countless other Superman fans did all across the country. The simultaneous reaction. We just read one of the greatest Superman stories ever told. And we were right. This thing has never been out of print since then. This came out in when? 1985. It's never been out of print since then. It is a classic, fantastic story. It was even made into an animated episode that is beautiful. The animated episode adds bits that aren't in the graphic novel to huge effect. Just amazing. This is a standalone story. It isn't part of the rest of Superman continuity, but it is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Also have the standalone issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths where Supergirl dies. Where you have all the DC universe standing there staring because Superman is crying over his dead cousin, who dies in this issue, purely for cynicism. Purely for cynicism. The beer-guzzling creators said before the show even started, before the series even began, when they had no idea what was going to happen. They didn't even know who the villain was. They knew that the Monitor, the character of the Monitor, was not the actual villain, that there was someone else. They didn't even have a name for that character. All they knew is that Supergirl had to die. Talk about cynicism. Then we've got the Defenders. We've got Doctor Strange, including a large run with the artwork by Gene Colan. That's just fantastic. Just fantastic. Gene Colan on Doctor Strange or on Tomb of Dracula is just incredible. Actually, I don't know why I called up this issue, but this issue is interesting in many, many ways. That is Doctor Strange's disciple Clea. who has never made an appearance in a Marvel Cinematic Universe, and whose relationship to Doctor Strange has never been completely plumbed. She is not human. She's from another dimension. She's the daughter of the dread Dormammu. And she becomes his adept for a while. She becomes his disciple for a while. And in this issue, they are traveling throughout time. They meet Francis Bacon in Elizabethan England. And here in this issue, they are on board a ship with Benjamin Franklin, who is headed back to the United States. At the beginning of the issue, Stephen Strange, Clea, of course, has no idea who Benjamin Franklin is. And he describes who Franklin is and he finishes up his story by saying, oh, and by the way, he was also something of a ladies' man. As if, I mean, the scripting, I remember reading this in the 70s and thinking, what does that mean? I thought she was your girlfriend. Why are you emphasizing it in that creepy way? Are so you know something about Clea. You know that she's going to be interested in that he's something of a ladies' man. And sure enough, while Doctor Strange is off fighting a sea monster, she gets busy with Benjamin Franklin. Show me that in a 2021 comic book. Then we have the Fantastic Four. Of a long run of the Fantastic Four, including the annuals, including annual number 11, where the Fantastic Four travels back in time to World War II. There's a Jack Kirby cover. This was during a period, it's a little touched up by John Romita Sr., but it's a Jack Kirby cover from the time when Kirby came back to Marvel. He did the writing and the artwork for Captain America and the Black Panther, and he was also given the Eternals as a book just to do on his own. But in addition to that, he did a whole bunch of covers. So there was a time there in Marvel, long after Kirby left the company, where he came back and did a whole bunch of covers. And it's terrific. The artwork here is by Sal Buscema, but the story is just terrific. The Invaders was an ongoing monthly comic at the time, a World War II superhero team. And this was just about the latest. I think the writing here is by Roy Thomas. Am I right about that? Yeah, Roy Thomas. This is just about the last time where, in continuity, the Reed Richards and Ben Grimm fought in World War II. This is just about the last time where that actually happens in continuity. There's actually a moment where they're scaling the wall of a villain's hideout, and Reed Richards says to the Thing, they actually have a moment where he says, Ben, do you realize that while we're here in France, our younger selves are back in the States, just now joining the service? No later Fantastic Four comic alludes to that, because the characters had to be aged out of that. That just couldn't happen otherwise. They have a long run on Justice League. I believe I have almost every issue of Justice League. So great moments, also dumb moments, all really bad ones. We have the 4 issues of Kingdom Come, which we've gone through. I have hundreds of issues of the Legion, the Legion of Superheroes, starting back in Adventure Comics, when Superboy joins the team for the first time. Starting there, but then moving on to actual Legion adventures. It was Superboy in the Legion of Superheroes for a long time. See, with the Nick Cardy cover, just incredible. And then it became the Legion of Superheroes for a long time. Just the titles and the proprieties changed for a while. See, there you've got. Then it became the Legion of Superheroes with a Ross Andru cover. Although Ross Andru, as far as I know, never did the internal artwork. He often did the covers for the Legion just as well. They never let him do the internals because he wouldn't have been a good choice. But there was a period for a while there where George Perez did the internals, who is a good choice for any team book. So we have the Legion, yes. But in addition to the Legion, I also have all of Superboy. When he wasn't on the Legion, when he was just back in Smallville, painting fences, helping get cats out of trees, that sort of thing. Hundreds and hundreds of issues of Superboy that I just love so much. Also, Savage Sword of Conan, which Michael and I have got around to, but we will again. He is the #1 Conan fan, so we will get to Conan again. Also, the Walt Simonson run on Thor. We've talked before about how comic books have runs, where a writer and artist will be in perfect sync and create just great issue after great issue. Oftentimes, the run will be facilitated if the writer and artist are the same person. In this case, Walt Simonson wrote and drew Thor for a period that all Thor fans look back and say is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, A lot of Thor fans will cite the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby years. But this, what do you call a 6'6" fighting mad frog? Sir. So a period in the Walt Simonson run where Thor is briefly transformed into a giant frog. We have the Joe Kubert run on Tarzan. Michael and I have not got to these yet, but we will. We haven't gotten to Tarzan at all, but we will. I have a few issues of Marvel Team Up. Used to be an old comic book where Spider-Man teamed up every month with some new character in the Marvel Universe. And in this issue, for instance, he teams up with Thor, the mighty Thor, to fight the living monolith, who's this gigantic, godlike being of enormous power. And at one point, Thor sidelines Spider-Man and decides to take on the living monolith himself. And here, once again, you have the weakness of e-comics for double-page spreads. There, Thor is jumping off the building to catch his hammer in order to strike the villain. But it's a 2-page spread, and you won't see that. You can open it in a comic book. You can't do it in an e-comic. And Thor has had enough. He cuts loose. This is artwork by John Byrne. He says, "No more will innocents be placed at hazard by our battle. I will create a breeze to push the tugboat crew towards the shore, and then I will create a tempest such as this world has never seen. Rise, ye winds, in the name of him who is thy master, and teach this arrant knave which of us is truly worthy of the title, God." And Spider-Man has nothing to do here. What's he going to do against the living monolith? Trade a quip? So he webs his way to the top of the Chrysler building and borrows one of the observation deck telescopes so that he can look at what's going on. He boots this couple off the deck so that he can look at what Thor is doing. And he narrates it. We don't see it. He narrates it. He says, "Thor's pulled out all the stops, all right. It's incredible. A hurricane barely a half-mile wide, and outside of it, everything is as calm as could be. But inside..." And then he asks, "How can any single being control so much power?" Which is, I imagine, a question that Marvel characters have about Thor quite a bit. But in addition to the Walt Simonson run on Thor, I also have the Lee Kirby run on Thor. Here is the conclusion to a great 4-part series where he fights the Mangog, who has, as he never stops telling us, the strength of a billion beings, and who desires, for some reason, to unsheath the Odin sword and destroy all life in the universe, including himself. We're never told why the Mangog would want to do that. But when he's defeated all of Asgard, he is approaching the throne room where the Odin sword is. There's nothing that can stop him, and everybody knows it. And Thor and the Lady Sif, his beloved, and the Rigelian Recorder, an android who often shows up as a kind of narrative foil in early Thor stories. The Recorder hasn't been seen in a long time. I dread to think what modern Marvel Comics would do with the Recorder. I know already what they would do, because the very first question Marvel Comics would want to know is, why is he a man? Anyway, the Recorder, see, we're in the throne room there, and the Recorder says, "Observation, my sensory registers inform me that Mangog has penetrated the castle defenses." And Thor says, "Then the moment is upon us. 'Tis here we fight, 'tis here we stand, and if destiny doth so decree, 'tis here we perish all." And Thor says, "The very walls begin to crumble. Art thou frightened, most fair Sif?" And she's standing right next to him. See that great artwork? That is Kirby just deciding that a close-up is required. And that is great. That is Kirby at his genius. She says, "Whilst I stand with thee, my lord? Nay, whate'er befalls, my heart is calm, and ever thine." And then Mangog comes crashing through the wall. And they don't have a chance of stopping him, and they know it. They just fight to the bitter end. And also I have a long run of World's Finest Comics from the 1940s. So, from the 1940s. So you're going to have to excuse the period innocent covers. Okay? These covers would be the subject of endless innuendo if they were done in 2021, a far more corrupt and debased age. This is one of those covers. There are a bunch of boys swimming in a swimming hole. Robin is inviting Superman and Batman to maybe throw off their duds and join in on the fun. That was considered a nice, sweet, innocent, fun comic cover. And I took it that way. That is just a little trip down the comics that are at the bottom of my Kindle. But it wouldn't be a World's Finest comic video if I didn't also offer invidious commentary on Michael K. Vaughan's choices, right? I want to see if I have that. Here, let me get this particular iPad will often just pettishly break the Wi-Fi connection. It's well within range. It can easily do it, but it will sometimes just do that and sort of cross its arms and say, you have to ask me nice. And I want to see if it will do that. If it will get me Wi-Fi again, then I can go to Michael K. Vaughan's video and we can look at what he did. Well, no. Well, how frustrating. No, it's not going to do that. It's not going to give me access to that. That's a bit of a shame because he mentioned a lot of things in his video that I'm not going to remember. His video showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that he has no self-control when it comes to buying comics. He mentioned Deathlock was a future cyborg comic that Marvel did in Astonishing Tales that was just awful, just incredibly awful. But he also mentioned a couple of things in his video that were really good that he hasn't got to yet. Like, for instance, the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby issues of the Rawhide Kid. Marvel was big into romance and Western and monster comics and whatnot, and they turned out an ocean of those things before they went to comics, and even afterwards, they still did a lot of those. And a lot of them were not much to think about. It was Dick Ayers doing the artwork, or even worse, it was Stan Lee's brother, Larry Lieber, doing the artwork. Always a bad idea. Always a bad idea. And when that was the case, these were nothing to look forward to. But when it wasn't the case, oh wait, the iPad is back. Oh great, fantastic. But anyway, I'm talking about when it wasn't the case, when it was done well. Like, for instance, some of those early Westerns had artwork by John Romita Sr. Always worth looking at, even if he's just drawing buildings and people standing around talking. But those Rawhide Kid issues, there are quite a few of them that have Dick Ayers artwork or Larry Lieber artwork. But the ones that don't, the ones that are actual collaborations between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, are really good. Not just in terms of Stan Lee had a sweet spot for writing hokum, and you don't get any more hokum than a comic book Western, but it also shows what we would consider to be Kirby. If you look at Kirby's artwork from the Boy Commandos, for instance, you won't see much of what you're looking for in Kirby later on. But in those issues of Rawhide Kid, you will. You will see that the kind of layout genius starting to feel its way around. And I imagine it was also a partnership that was starting to feel its way around, right? Where if you're Stan Lee and you hand an artist a script and you get back something that Jack Kirby can do, you might give that artist a little more leeway. You might say, well, I want this to happen, but I'm not going to break it down panel by panel. I'd like to see what you do. I think that their famous collaboration probably developed along those lines. So that's the whole run of Rawhide Kid is something that would be very nice to have as an e-comic. But what else do we have here? He mentioned Silver Age World's Finest, which I've just shown you a little bit of, where it was Batman and Superman teaming up, and Michael K. Vaughan has an electronic omnibus. He probably has print omnibuses of them too, that DC has been doing regularly. I love them. They're great. They're absolutely fantastic. They went on for years and years. They're so much fun. The only quibble I would have with Michael's description of them being Batman and Superman teaming up is that it's very much Batman, Superman, and Robin. Robin holds his own in those issues. What else do we have here? Knowing Michael K. Vaughan, there'll be quite a bit of stuff he mentioned that's absolute garbage. Yes, American Vampire. Absolute garbage. BPRD, the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, the spin-off title from Mike Mignola's Hellboy, only with nominal or non-existent involvement by Mike Mignola, and so junk. I mentioned Deathlock. He also has an early collection of She-Hulk. I bought the first issue of She-Hulk just because it had John Buscema artwork. I wasn't interested in a knockoff character at all, and it wasn't a very interesting story either. I didn't know that there were old Marvel archive volumes. He mentions the Atlas era Tales of Astonish and Tales of Suspense and whatnot. He has a taste for these monster things that I just don't share. He mentions Resident Alien, which was kind of a dumb. It got a kind of a dumb TV adaptation. There was one young actor in that TV adaptation who deserved better than the material that he got. He's actually really, really good. He'll get his day sooner or later. Cheekbones don't lie. He mentions the Cimmerian. He has e-copies of the Cimmerian, which is a French adaptation of Robert E. Howard Conan stories. The Robert E. Howard Conan stories, I guess, have slipped out of private ownership in Europe. So as long as you're not advertising it with Conan, with the word Conan in the title, you can have Adventures of Conan. I have a couple of those individual issues adapting famous Robert E. Howard stories, and they're quite good. Very different from previous adaptations. What else does he say here? Oh yes, Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science, these old EC comics. I know he loves them. I know Michael loves them. He'll probably drag me through them at some point, but oh god. He mentions Jack Kirby's The Eternals, which I've mentioned in this video, where Kirby had this new idea for a comic book. A superpowered race of beings, each one of whom is more powerful than any other superhero in the Marvel lineup. A whole race of them. Not hit or miss powers like the Inhumans, but a whole race of god tier level super beings that have just been hiding all this time on Earth. It immediately throws a spanner into all of Marvel continuity, and Kirby had to have been told that. Somebody had to have told him that, probably Roy Thomas, the king of Marvel continuity. And there was a little while there in the first couple of issues where those of us who were buying the Eternals were thinking, well, maybe this isn't Marvel. Maybe this is a callback to the old Tales to Astonish and whatnot. Maybe this isn't really Marvel. But then, of course, Kirby pulls in the Hulk or something that looks like the Hulk for an obligatory crossover to make sure we know this is happening in the Marvel Universe, which ruins everything. It ruins everything. Anyway, he also mentions Marv Wolfman's spin-off from the Teen Titans, the Vigilante, who wears a ski outfit in order to fight crime. He's sort of a Punisher knockoff. He mentions anthologies of the Golden Age Batman and Golden Age Wonder Woman. I didn't know these things existed in ebook form. I would very much, not so much Golden Age Wonder Woman, which gets a little weird, but Golden Age Batman, I would love all of it. Just all of it. It's fascinating to read, especially to read a large string of issues at a time and see changes as they're happening, only without waiting the long period of time. I didn't know that a lot of Golden Age Batman existed as e-copies. That would be fantastic. He mentions, again, creepy and eerie 1970s horror magazines. I would bet a Boston cream pie that he has not actually gone back to look at any of these Tales of Monsters or Root or Groot or Rude or whatever, Titano the Awesome. I'd be willing to bet a Boston cream pie that he doesn't regularly go back to those things. That like a normal person, he goes back to superhero comics. He mentions the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, again, Alan Moore, where Alan Moore takes a whole bunch of Victorian fictional characters and makes a kind of quasi-super team out of them. And I enjoy Alan Moore's comic, I guess, a little. It's a little bit too weird and a little bit too snooty for me, but I like parts of it. But Michael K. Vaughan bashes the movie League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I mean, how do you do that with a straight face? The movie is awesome. The library scene alone, those of you who know the movie, the library scene alone is awesome. Absolutely incredible. You could hang up your hat if you've written just that scene. Anyway, he mentions Lock and Key by Joe Hill. I've never got the appeal. I know Lock and Key is popular. He mentions Spider-Man, A Life Story. Well, the original elevator pitch of which is interesting. What if Peter Parker got his spider powers in the 1960s, just like it happened in the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko comic book, but then he ages normally instead of, no more than 10 years going by. Instead, he ages normally, so that by the time Peter Parker is in the 1990s, he's had his powers for 30 years. The elevator pitch is good. The book was botched, I thought, almost from the first issue, just botched. If you're going to do a series like that, then the novelty of the gimmick should be the point of the series. It shouldn't be just that Spider-Man, Peter Parker is going to age normally in time, but in the meantime, we're just going to give you boring, normal adventures. That shouldn't be true. And they did the same thing with the Fantastic Four, just recently, the Fantastic Four life story. That was the same thing, just botched. The concept good, but the issue's not. He mentions The Walking Dead. Ugh, comic books, oh my god, they're big tome things. They've never appealed to me. And also Challengers of the Unknown, which is exactly the kind of thing that he has 80 million omnibus volumes of that I can't imagine ever voluntarily reading an issue of at all. Golden Age Batman, yes. World's Finest all the way back to the beginning, yes, absolutely. I wish I had e-comic books of World's Finest in the 70s and 80s. the comic was still going on, but it got a little more operatic. The issues got a little more memorable. That would be terrific. And I'll close up by saying the comic videos always go long. I'll close up by commenting on one comment that Michael K. Vaughan ends his video with, by mentioning that it's not just comic books, but also all of his reading is creepingly more and more digital. Not just comics, but books as well. Because your digital device is always right there. If it's a Kindle, it barely ever needs recharging. You don't have to worry about a nearby power cord. And it's no falderall. It's no mess. You can drop your lunch on it and just wipe it off. It's not as much of a bother. There's a convenience factor that really helps to have ebooks at your beck and call. Even e-comic books at your beck and call. I totally agree with that. I thought it was only right for Christmas time if we end a Comic Book Wednesday video in total agreement. The rest of that list might be dog crap. No, not even dog crap, because I'm interested in dog crap. But the rest of it might be hits and misses, but we can end on that note that I, too, increasingly, over the course of months, really find myself just grabbing for the iPad to do some reading. So anyway, there you go. This video's gone on way too long. I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.